What is up, everyone? Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we will be reacting to what exactly is a sprint car from the Slapshoes channel, because quite a few of you have requested I react to this video, so I'm very excited to get into it. But before we do that, make sure you subscribe. Over half of you that watch my videos still aren't subscribed. Just hit the bell, it takes 2 seconds, and if you'd like to become a member on my channel and receive exclusive perks, you can also do that by hitting the join button down below. Right, okay, I'm very excited, so let's go.
If you've ever watched American motorsports for more than about 5 seconds, then you have eventually seen these insane looking things ripping around a dirt track in some part of the country you've never heard of before. But what the hell are
I
you
did react to
looking at
this
here?
and I
It
was
looks
like, what am I
somebody
looking at
strapped
here?
a ping pong table on top of a go-kart. There's more wing than car. The tires are huge. And how is it even possible to go that fast on dirt?
Yeah.
Well, these are sprint cars. But where did that name come from? If they're called sprint cars, why does it take all day to put on a race? Well, let's get to know these kings of the dirt a little bit better, because they are about as old as auto racing itself.
Oh, okay.
The first form of professionally organized motorsports in the US was what would go on to become IndyCar, but at the time they were called Champ Cars. These were the first generation of purpose-built race cars, and they popped up right around the turn of the 20th century, not even 2 decades removed from the invention of the automobile itself. In 1909, the season finale for the IndyCar series was a 480-mile race from LA to Phoenix, Arizona, and that race took 19 hours to complete. Today, with modern live broadcasting and timing and scoring, that could be a very interesting race to watch. But this is 1909. Commercial radios hadn't even been invented yet.
Yeah.
Watching a race in person wasn't just not fun, it was confusing and sometimes impossible. You had no way of knowing who was ahead of who or if the race was even over yet. For a lot of races, they didn't even sell tickets. You could just walk up and just watch the race. Nobody would stop you. You'd find out who won the next day when you read it in the paper. Because most of these races were
I'd be at a
sponsored by
racetrack
newspapers,
24/7.
and those publications used the races to sell more papers. Like many things in America, racing was initially just a ruse to get you to buy something else. Those Champ cars eventually began racing at paved tracks too, when the Indianapolis Motor Speedway opened for its first races in 1909.
Wow,
in 1911, the first
footage.
Indy 500 was held, and Ray Haroon had modified his Marmon Wasp to be a single-seat, open cockpit car with mirrors so he could see what was going on around him. Thus, people began calling his creation
How
an
big
Indy
the car
Special,
is.
and later an Indy car. These Indy cars began racing on the dirt and road courses too, and they seemed to be able to race at any track with any surface pretty damn well. With long wheelbases and big motors, Indy cars were the cream of the crop when it came to not just American motorsports but international motorsports as well. The idea of a single-seat open cockpit car took off in Europe, and by 1950, Formula One racing had kicked off and quickly became the premier motorsport in the world. And those people eventually ended up creating what are known as midget cars. These had small 4-cylinder engines and incredibly short wheelbases, but had the general shape and aesthetics of an Indy car. As such, they were slower but still difficult to drive. If you could race well in one of these, then there was likely a spot for you in the big leagues. On the plus side though, these cars were cheap. Fields were always slammed full of competitors, and they usually served as a preliminary race for their bigger IndyCar brothers. There are even smaller versions of midget cars that became popular too. Quarter midgets, 3/4 midgets,
wow,
and micro midgets
look at them.
served as the proving grounds for new talent, and bear in mind this ladder system was developed well before World War II. These guys were way ahead of the curve. But around this time, an intermediary between the midget and the Indy car had come along, the sprint car. Sprints were almost perfectly in the middle between a midget and a full-sized Indy roadster, and became what was essentially the minor league for IndyCar. If you want to know why pretty much every single short track in America has lights, you can thank these guys. During World War II, all non-essential driving was banned. Car races and even joyriding were strictly prohibited to save fuel for the war effort. But once the war was won, those GIs came home, and all over the country they found new hobbies in auto racing. In the South, it was stock car racing. Out West, it was drag racing. The first motorcycle clubs formed, made up almost entirely of Army surplus Harleys. And in the Midwest, where IndyCar was king and sprints were cheap, open-wheel dirt track racing flourished. It was impossible to escape it. Sprint cars got faster and a lot more technical. By the late 1950s, sprint cars had switched to bigger V8 engines, leaving the 4-cylinders to the midgets. And the first aerodynamic wings started to get installed. These weren't the modern upside-down airplane wings with the side plates we see today. No, these were basically just gigantic scoop wings that planted the cars into the ground by brute force of wind, which paired quite well with the new big V8s. Thus, these winged sprint cars with V8s became called outlaw sprint cars. This will come into play later. Although rifts had begun to form in the world of midget and sprint car racing, the biggest was still yet to come. In 1970, the dirt asphalt schism happened. Both NASCAR and IndyCar held their last dirt races. And IndyCar had already adopted new Formula One style rear engine cars for racing on paved speedways. Now there were no similarities between Indy cars and sprint cars. And even to this day, sprint cars, visually speaking, have not changed that much since their 1960s ancestors.
I'm loving looking at all of this old footage. I just love,
like roll cages,
find it so fascinating.
The fundamental
the
layout
evolution
of the car
of
has
cars.
been locked away in time for decades.
Love it.
But underneath the body panels, lots of innovations from IndyCar nonetheless found a home with the sprints and midgets. The engines became ever larger, going all the way up to 410 cubic inches, as mechanics would just drop IndyCar motors straight into the smaller sprint cars. And as they learned more about aerodynamics, the wings became more and more intricate. They switched from gasoline to methanol as fuel, and by 1978, the World of Outlaws was founded, where all the biggest and best sprint cars and their drivers would have a place to compete against each other. And they're not racing for peanuts either. These events routinely pay out 5, 6, or sometimes 7 figures. There is serious money in this. And that's not just the World of Outlaws. There are dozens of smaller promotions in just about every single state. Even in my neck of the woods in South Carolina, where sprint car racing is rare, we still have the Carolina Sprint Car Tour and the United Sprint Car Series. If you want to watch this type of racing, chances are you can find it in your backyard pretty easily. Today, these outlaw methanol-fueled 410 cubic inch V8 powered sprint cars can produce upwards of 1,000 horsepower and weigh as little as 1,400 pounds. That is a power-to-weight ratio that puts Formula One cars to shame. And the cost to build a competitive 410 Sprint from the ground up is only about $100K. For a modern race car, that is dirt cheap.
Yeah.
And because of their unified rules package, pretty much any 410 Sprint in the country can be entered into World of Outlaw Series race. So at every major event where big names like David Gravel, Brad Sweet, and Donnie Schatz are competing, there's a plethora of local heroes in the mix as well. Tons of talent comes through the dirt world to this day. NASCAR stars like Christopher Bell, Kyle Larson, and Chase Briscoe all got their start in dirt midgets and sprints. Jeff Gordon and Tony Stewart also came from that discipline as well. And the next batch of NASCAR stars are probably racing midgets on dirt somewhere right now as we speak. And if you're not from America, I've got some good news for you if you're from down under. Sprint cars have migrated overseas and have found a nice little home for themselves in Australia and New Zealand. So even abroad, you can still enjoy some of the fastest, most powerful speed demons in the world. Today, open-wheel dirt track racing has as many divisions as you can imagine.
Telling me I gotta go to America
old,
or Australia?
Those front-engine Indy cars are still competing today, and they're known as Silver Crown cars. These cars are insanely fast, the costs are considerably lower, and the skills needed to drive in the upper divisions of sprint cars are out of this world. The best of the best rise to the top, and it is as close to a meritocracy as we're going to get.
I thought he was going to spin out then.
Anyway, I'm Slapshoes, thanks for watching, and go visit your local dirt track sometime and watch some sprint car racing. You owe it to yourself.
I wish I could.
A few moments later.
Yeah, that was very interesting to me because I did a compilation of, I reacted to this video and it was like ultimate, I think it was dirt racing crash compilation. I was very intrigued because one of you said that I should react to something like that. Had no idea what I was watching, but I was like, wow, this is so fascinating to me. Discovered a whole new motorsport and really enjoyed it. And then one of you said that I should react to this video. Well, a couple of you said I should react to this video. So that was very fascinating now that I know like the ins and outs of where it came from. Like I said during my reaction, I find it so fascinating watching like the evolution of cars. So seeing all of that old footage, I was going crazy on the inside. So that being said, if you have any other videos that you'd like me to react to, drop them in the comments. I'm working my way through everybody's suggestions at the moment. If you would like to check out any of my other socials, they are all linked down below. And if you'd like to become a member on my channel and receive exclusive perks, you can also do that by hitting the join button down below. But I hope you enjoyed today's reaction, and I will catch you next time for the next one. Bye!